Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode here in our Max Colonization series. Today, we're going to be heading over to the Planetoid of Gasito, which is going to be a little exciting because it's home to the gassy moos. But before we take off, a couple of updates here on our home planetoid of Fernial. I have improved the oxygen filling system for our rocket, and that involved creating yet another SPOM and this setup here. I now have 4 gas rocket port loaders. And what we're looking at here is one leg is completely responsible for filling one port loader. Remember, our first loader was being filled from the earlier SPOM down here. The other 2 are being filled by these gas tanks. In between flights, the SPOM fills up all the gas tanks. When we land, each column of tanks is responsible for filling its own loader. So it used to take a little bit more than 18 cycles, now only takes us about 4.5. Saves me a lot of time. Now we of course are going to need a rover. Let's make sure it's set up. It is. Checking the interior of the rockets, looks like we're ready here, except I'm going to include one more item, and that is going to be a pip. This one is only 6 cycles old, so I'm going to relocate you to go inside the rocket. Say bye to your friends, little buddy. You're not coming back. Okay, that just sounds sad. Just like before, I'm going to add Josh Manchester to the crew of the ESS Explorer. That way he can hop into the Trailblazer module. And with all that done, our rockets can now head off to Gasito. And since it's going to take the rockets a few minutes to get there, I figured now would be a good time to explain what our plan going in is. And boy, it's going to be crazy to the effect that I don't even know if it's going to work. At the minimum, our dupes require 2 things: food and oxygen. Well, this planetoid has no sources of water. We could set up an interplanetary launcher and just ship it over continuously using some array of automation that whenever Gasito's water supply ran low, we just fire off some more. But that's too easy, isn't it? Yes it is. Insert the gassy moo. Now a standard gassy moo, when domesticated and fed, can be milked for brackine. Usually, if they're happy, once every 4 cycles. And fortunately, there's a way to get from brackine to water using the brackine gleaner. 600 kilos of brackine goes in, a little bit of brackwax, and brine comes out. 486 kilos worth. Alternatively, we could also ranch the wonderful husky moo. That would produce us biodiesel. We could take the biodiesel, run it into the petroleum generator. That recently has been updated to accept biodiesel, in which case we would end up with polluted water coming from the petroleum generator. We also could collect the natural gas coming from the gassy moos and throw it in a natural gas generator, which would also produce us some polluted water. The question then becomes, no matter what solution we end up with, how many gassy moos are we going to be able to support, and is it going to be enough to supply this colony with its needed water? And to be honest, I have no idea. We're going to learn together. Now that our crews are here, give me a few minutes to get everything set up. We're going to do the same sort of thing that we've done a bunch of times. Nothing really new to see there. So why don't we do an old-fashioned montage? And I think that will about do it. We've got a strong base of operations ready to colonize this planet? ? You may have seen me collecting gas grass seeds during the montage, and the reason why is because I wanted to count and see how many we have. We are going to be wild planting them, for the simple reason I don't want to provide the liquid chlorine or the dirt. Unfortunately, a gassy moo eats 50% of a domestically planted gas grass. So instead of them being able to sustain themselves on 2 gas grasses, it's now going to take 8 gas grasses. The methodology for getting the domesticated to wild ratios is always a factor of 4. So instead of it taking 4 cycles to grow, it's going to take 16 cycles. And that works with most every plant. But the reason why that's important, because I'm going to be wild planting them, they're going to take longer to grow, which means it's going to take longer to get additional seeds. And here's the reason. The gassy moo is going to give us 200 kilos of brackine every 4 cycles. Well, if I take that brackine and I put it into a brackwax cleaner, I'm going to get 81% of the brackine back as brine. Well, remember, brine, once it goes through a desalinator, only gives you 70% water. Well, if we take that 81% and multiply it by the 70%, our overall ratio from brackine all the way down to clean water becomes 56.7%. So then our electrolyzer math becomes pretty easy. We know we want to support 2 duplicants out of the electrolyzer. Well, the ratio for the oxygen for 2 duplicants is 200 over 888, or a little over 22.5%, which means I need 22.5% of the water in order to support that, which at 600 kilos per cycle, being the maximum input for an electrolyzer, means I need 135 kilos worth of water. Then the math comes full circle. We already know that I'm going to be getting 50 kilos worth of brackine from the gassy moo per cycle, and we can take that and convert it into water with our 56.7%, which means we're going to be getting a little bit more than 28 kilos of water per cycle. Well, I just said we needed 135 kilos, so the 135 kilos divided by the 28.35 kilos per gassy moo means I need 4.76 gassy moos. So we'll just round that up to 5 gassy moos. And we just said each gassy moo is going to require 8 wild planted gas grasses, which means we need 40 wild plants. This is going to take quite a long time. So we'll start with our 34 and then rely on Noosh and friends to be able to give us those extra seeds whenever they're harvesting. Which oddly enough, even though Noosh has been a rancher and farmer for 871 cycles, they only have an agriculture of 6 to give us a plus 20% seed chance. Fallout Stan has an agriculture of 13 for a plus 43% chance. Granted, Fallout Stan is twice as old. Apparently they were printed on cycle 3. So it looks like I have some pip planning to do. I'll be back in a month. The next challenge I'm facing is where to put the ranches. There's a couple of considerations. The biggest one is the fact that, well, the gas grass requires 10,000 lux. And I just realized all of my math is not going to check out 100% for the simple reason that the sun isn't always up. Oh boy. I wish there was a battery for light. Okay, now how many gas grass seeds am I going to need? Let's go ahead and just swag a guess and say an extra 2 per moo. So now I need 10 per moo for a total of 50 seeds. The other issue is the fact that if I have to plant 20 seeds inside of each ranch, plus I'm going to need a critter drop-off, a grooming station, and a milking station. Yeah, this is not going to work. And you might not think that's a big deal, except for the fact with pip planting, I'm going to have to go 3 and then skip 3 tiles and then go 3 more. And so the actual footprint of the stable is going to be quite large, even though there's only 2 gassy moos in it. Combine that with the fact that I need 3 of those ranches, and they all have to be up top so they can get to the light. I guess I'm just going to go ahead and get started and see what I come up with. And somehow I have to get light visible area across basically the entire planetoid. Oh, this is not good. The pip is freezing. Its livable temperature is only minus 45 to 100. And it's minus 61 over here. Well, this just got a whole lot more complicated. Can I put the pip in a sweater? Okay, maybe we actually domesticate him. So take all that math I did before and just, divide it by 4. It's going to be okay. The biggest change is the fact that we're actually going to have to feed it liquid chlorine, 500 grams per cycle, so it's not a lot, but also 25 kilos worth of dirt. I do have an idea of where I can get the dirt though. We can take all that plant husk that we're getting from the gas grass, compost it, and get dirt. The question is though, am I going to be able to get 500 grams of liquid chlorine per cycle per plant out of this one gas vent? Might as well open it up and analyze it to see. I wish I would have thought about domesticating them before, because this project just got a whole lot easier. Or at least quicker. Let me get some of the basic construction in, and I'll give you an update here in a little bit. So I've been a little busy. We still have some work to do, but I figured I'd give you a quick update. This is where our ranches are going to be. Notice that the plant positions are offset from each other, and we do that just so the hydroponic farms don't block the light going to the other farms. Still a lot more work to do in here, but we've got some meat and potatoes in. I'm also moving all of the chlorine on the colony over to what's going to be the nice tank. Now notice I just have the chlorine gas vent open and allowing it to erupt, and it's because it's so cold in here that it's all turning into chlorine rain anyways. Now, eventually I'm going to need a proper tamer, and that's going to take some supercoolant because that chlorine likes to be at least minus 35, so we'll probably go somewhere around minus 50. So once again, we're going to be looking for some frost-proof dupes because we need this entire colony to stay at that minus 50, and that way the chlorine stays as a liquid. We did finish analyzing the chlorine vent, by the way, and yeah, it's plenty of chlorine. This turns out to be, on average, about 77 kilos worth of chlorine, which at 500 grams per cycle is enough for about 145 gas grasses. I have our nice solar panels in. This place is turning out to be nice. I'm also going to have a bunch of those composts that we talk about that's going to be taking all the plant husks and turning them into dirt, not to mention the polluted dirt coming from the outhouses, and those, along with these batteries, are going to create heat, so we need to make sure that we're keeping this entire colony at around that minus 50. Still a lot of work to do here, but we're making progress. I'm about ready to get the gas grass going. I'm going to have to ship over some starter dirt, though. There's none on this planetoid, and all of our gas grasses are going to require it from the rip. Almost finished up with the ranches, which is good because I need to get some brackine. That way I can turn it into water so I have something to put into the steam turbine chamber that I'm building. There's going to be another issue though. I'm going to need 2 different zones. This brackine, I think it's going to freeze in the pipes. It only likes to go down to 16.5 degrees. And then once we are using the brack wax cleaner, the brine will only go down to minus 22.5 before it turns into ice. So I'm going to need a brax wax melter on top of everything else. Maybe this area here will stay warm? I don't know. I'll figure it out when we get there. We're about to get our first milking of the gassy moo, so I'm going to get to see how long this brack wax can survive in the insulated pipes. I'm not exactly sure. For now, I'm just dropping it off in between these 3 metal tiles, which should instantly freeze it. Okay, brackine sitting at 37 degrees and not budging. So the temperature of the milking station does not impact the temperature of the brackine. So I might be able to get this into a brack wax cleaner before it freezes. That makes the job a little bit easier. But now that the stables are up and running, let me go over you a few tips and tricks for working with your gassy moos. First, you'll notice there's tiny little liquid locks next to all these doors, and that's because, well, they're called gassy moos for a reason. All of the natural gas that they expel, we don't need. And so we're taking it, pumping it to the vacuum of space. But I don't want all of this area to be natural gas because our dupes would be very unhappy. Now granted, they're going to be unhappy, at least the rancher, every time they go into the ranch and get sopping wet. But it's not going to be too big of a deal in terms of stress. One, remember all of our dupes have the maximum aptitude, which gives them minus 25%. Plus, I put a bunch of carpeted areas where is eventually going to be their living area. A great hall here, some bedrooms, and some bathrooms. You'll also notice that I didn't put any of the gas grass right up next to the wall, and that's because gassy moos are notorious for getting stuck. They are a 2x2 critter. It's the same thing with the grooming station and the milking station. You need clearance on both sides so the gassy moos can get there safely. Now you'll notice that every once in a while I'm getting some pipe bursts. This is only temporary. Once I get the aqua tuner in and get this place down to what I'm guessing now is going to be about 45 degrees, gassy moos don't like it any colder than 50 degrees, that problem will go away. Yeah, this brackine is holding on strong. It has a really good specific heat capacity at 4.1, so it's taking a decent amount of time to lower in temp. The last thing you need to know about these ranches specifically is the use of the critter sensor. You'll notice I'm tracking how many gassy moos are in here. When it is below 2, this critter sensor, or any one of these, is going to send out a green signal. When it does, that green signal is going to go all the way over here to this critter pickup, which we can see will say, hey, time to wrangle some excess critters. Otherwise, it'll ignore excess critters. And right now, if we were to send a green signal, and there were gassy moos in the area, a rancher would come wrangle them. So whenever we are down to one gassy moo here, we get the green signal, rancher comes and wrangles a gassy moo and brings it into the ranch. There's going to end up being a lot of gassy moos out here over time, which is good because as they perish, I need to collect their delicious meat, which comes out to be 16,000 calories. That's going to make quite a lot of barbecue. And if you're not sure where all those gassy moos come from, well, when a gassy moo is happy, they gain a certain amount of accumulation per cycle. 6% to be exact. So after a little over 16 cycles, the gassy moo will do their gassy moo song. I'll definitely try to get one of those on camera, which will cause some moodiers to come down with fresh gassy moos. And yes, they are actually called moodiers. I think we've gotten a decent amount done today. I could have saved myself a lot of time if I would have just abandoned the wild planting of the gas grass a little bit earlier. Sorry it's been a little bit of a delay on new video postings. I'm not saying that you should come to expect it. It's just that these episodes are starting to take longer and longer, but I will still keep trying to push them out as fast as I can. Next episode, we're going to be installing that steam turbine, getting the cooling loop going, getting the compost going for our renewable source of dirt. We have our compostable gas grasses here that we're going to be grabbing the plant husks from. We'll get working on the dupe living areas, build a small spawn, and start to find the dupes that are actually going to inhabit this colony. I'm looking forward to hearing what you thought about this episode in the comments below. And until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.